Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss about the chapter of your textbook 2.4 An Epitome of Courage. My dear friends, what do you think what do you know by an epitome? Epitome is a very nice example. It is an example. And courage is that kind of feel which makes us stable in any kind of situation into the life. Means if we are facing any opposite situations, any situations which make us weaker emotionally, the courage is that feel which make us to face these kind of situations. It maintains our moral into the life. So my dear friends, this chapter is actually about Dr. Stephen Hawking. Let us see why he has known as an epitome of courage. So page number 62. We often tend to hide behind our weaknesses, disabilities, handicaps, or mourn over them our whole life through. Dr. Stephen Hawking, one of the greatest scientists of this century, he did not do so. In spite of suffering from a very rare and dreaded disease, Dr. Hawking continued his research undaunted. His exemplary courage should inspire us to do our best even under trying circumstances. My dear friends, it is very obvious or natural in general. A person, if he is suffering from any kind of disability or any kind of weakness, he wants to hide that from the society. We never want to expose our weaknesses among the people, but to maintain this situation, we make too much mistakes and our own growth is not having in good quality and quantity. So my dear friend, Dr. Stephen Hawking is one of the greatest scientists in this century, and he was suffering from a very bad disease and it was very rare, and Dr. Hawkins was not got affected by that disease. He continued his researches and his courage make him a very nice example in front of us. So my dear friend, let us see how he had done it. Exactly 3 years after the death of the great scientist Galileo, Dr. Stephen Hawking was born in Oxford, London on the 8th day of January 1942. Little did his parents know that one day their little boy would be hailed as one of the greatest scientists of this century. Neither could anybody imagine that his mind would soar up into space like light. More importantly, none could predict that he would be the very epitome of courage. So my dear friends, Dr. Hawking was the person who was born in 1942, 8th January, after the death of after 3 years death of the great scientist Galileo. And like every child, his parents wanted that he would be a great scientist of this century, and no one predicted that he will create an epitome. Courage is a wonderful thing. It is that quality which makes people not lose heart when faced with a great calamity. It would be an exaggeration to say that Dr. Stephen Hawking, a living legend of cosmology, is the very personification of courage and hope. Except his mind, his whole body is bound to a wheelchair thanks to cruel quirk of fate, yet he is one of the greatest scientists of this century. My dear friends, courage is that wonderful thing, we have already discussed that, which makes people to not lose their hope into any kind of situation, into a great calamity too. So Dr. Hawking was suffering from a disease. He was thrown onto the wheelchair by the destiny, but his mind was still safe, and because of this mind and his courage into his heart, he became a living legend of cosmology. And to call him living legend of cosmology will not be exaggeration, because of having handicapped, he was done, his researches continued, and he is one of the greatest scientists in this century. An average child, Stephen grew up to be a normal teenager full of mischief and lots of love for music and mathematics. Even though his father wanted him to study medicine, he was bent on studying mathematics. The University of Oxford at that time did not have a course in mathematics, so he opted to study physics instead. Thereafter, at the age of 17, Stephen started noticing that he was becoming increasingly clumsy and even fell down a couple of times for no reason. This perplexed him, and he wanted to see his family doctor, who diagnosed him as suffering from an extremely rare disease, ALS or LOU, Gehrig's disease, that affects the nervous system and eventually weaknesses all muscles of the body. Stephen says that even as a child, his muscles coordination was nothing to write home about. He recollects that his handwriting would send his teacher into a fit of frenzy, nor was he inclined towards sports. Nevertheless, this disease came as a bolt from the blue. So, my dear friends, the Dr. Hawkins was born on 8th January 1942. Thereafter, he grew up as an average child, as a normal child. He was naughty also, and he was lover of music and mathematics. But he opted mathematics, instead of mathematics he had opted physics, because in the Oxford University at that time there was not the subject mathematics. When he was at the age of 17, he was becoming incompetent, and his family doctor diagnosed that he was suffering from ALS or LOU, which was a rare disease, Gehrig's disease, which affect nervous system. At that time, Dr. Hawkins recollected that during his childhood many times his teacher annoyed on him because of his bad handwriting, and he remembered that his coordination of muscles and hands was not good. And now, after some time, at the age of 17, it was into its peak effect. So, my dear friends, now from the birth of Dr. Hawkins at the age of 17, we have seen that he was a very naughty and very normal kind of person, but here he became a disabled person while he was thrown onto the wheelchair, but his mind was still safe and active. Now, before Dr. Hawkins, there were two ways. First was to make himself stay onto the wheelchair and make himself weaker and neutral to not do anything because he was disabled. And the second was that he was having his mind safe and active, so by using this mind and his hope into his heart, he could choose the path to continue his researches. So my dear friends, the courage taken place, and Dr. Hawkins did not choose this way, and he had chosen this way. He made himself to make active and face this unexpected shock from the destiny, and thereafter, in spite having these kind of very opposite situation into his life, he continued his researches and he got himself very couraged. So my dear friends, in our next video we will see what happened next and what the situation done with Dr. Hawkins.